Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cyber Sensei, the definitive podcast for cybersecurity educators, brought to you by Cyberbit. My name is Shachal. I'm Cyber Sensei's podcast producer, and today I'll replace Sharon. Welcome back to most of you, and for those who are first-timers, hello, and we're lucky as always to have Adam here with us. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Shahar.
And today we have also a special guest speaker who has impressive experience as a hiring manager and now is our customer success manager here at Cyberbit, Jordan. Hi, Jordan.
Hello.
So I'll get back to you shortly. And just before we jump into today's topic, just a few reminders to our live audience. First of all, thank you so much for coming, and we're really happy to have you here. The session we'll have here is live because we want to hear you. We host this session so you'll have direct access to our senseis, ask them questions, and consult without any hesitations. And that's why we're here. So feel free to do so. Please use the chat box to ask any questions. And in about 25 minutes, we'll also open up the mics for questions if you want to talk live. So please use your mic. We'll do it in the Q&A session. Two more things before we start. So first, this session is recorded, and the recording will be available on all leading podcast platforms and on the Cyberbit YouTube channel. And all updates will be published on our Cyberbit's LinkedIn profile. So please make sure to follow right now. Follow us on LinkedIn so you'll have all the updates. And now, without further ado, I'd like to pass over the mic to Jordan. Jordan, please introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan Kent, and like Shahar said, I am a customer success manager over here at Cyberbit. And I like to think of my job in short as my job is to make cybersecurity instructors' lives as easy as possible and students' lives as enriched as possible through real-world hands-on experience with cybersecurity tools. And as was mentioned earlier, I'm a former hiring manager in the space. I worked with a relatively large SIM company as a training manager before this, and I ran a lot of interviews with a lot of different people. So I have some, I think, unique experience in terms of what we're looking for graduates and new workforce employees. So that's me. And then we're going to get into what we're talking about. So primarily what I'm going to focus on is what I try and do specifically to help people get to where they need to be and help instructors improve their curriculum in whatever way they see fit if they want to change it at all. So one of the things I noticed when I've been doing these interviews for a long time is that people coming straight out of school are unfortunately a lot of times unhireable. A lot of the interviews I did over the course of my experience at previous companies was that people fresh out of school just didn't have what they needed in order to be successful in the industry straight out of school. And then we say 23%. In my experience, it was a zero. I did not hire a single person straight out of school, mostly because of these things over here on the next slide. They lacked that hands-on experiential learning. They were very, very limited with enterprise networks, and they had minimal exposure to security tools and the different attack vectors and soft skills. They knew a lot of the knowledge. They had a lot of the knowledge down when we talk about what do you need to know in order to be successful in this industry. Like, I know what kind of attacks are out there. I know of the tools, but they didn't really have a grasp on how to use them. And if I asked them to show me, that was a big part of the interviewing process in my experience. Show me, don't just tell me, but show me. It didn't really go well, unfortunately. And that really struck a chord for me. I'll explain why in a few minutes. It's like, show me how to log into a Linux host with PuTTY and then try and identify if an attack is coming from this specific vector in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. If I wanted him to show me that, it's hard to do. Also, very few of them were aligned to specific roles. If we look at NICE, KSE, and T roles, as defined by that framework, a lot of people were kind of mismatched everywhere, which is perfectly fine for being interested in something, but when I'm trying to fill a specific role, if they knew more about that specific role, it would really be helpful. So I really wanted people who had that kind of experience, or at least knowledge. Also, familiarity with corporate grade networks. That was a big one. That was a really big one. You could get people who, yeah, they can connect to the tool, they can use the tool on an isolated environment of maybe one or two hosts, but then you drop them into a real world environment with 40 or so hosts on this little section of a network, and they just kind of go, I don't know what to do. And that was hard. That was challenging. So I really needed somebody who could kind of walk into that. And yeah, of course, you're not going to know that network intimately, but have an idea of where to get started. Another big one was soft skills. So, okay, you found the thing. Very good. You found the thing. So now what? Who do you tell? How do you report? Is this a compliance issue? What do we need to do from here? And again, a lot of times we got kind of those blank stares of I don't know. I don't know what to do. And that made it challenging in a lot of ways. Okay, there we go. I was just going to pull something up real quick. There we go. All right, so what did I do? Why did I bother taking this position? I had a very prominent position at the sim company. Why did I change? Well, this is a passion project for me specifically. What we noticed was I really want to be able to get fresh graduates into this system, into this industry, but I just can't. So we started trying to build a way to add curriculum into schools with the content we had at the time. And then Cyberbit called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to do that full time?" And I was like, "Yes," because it was just such a personal issue for me. Because when I graduated, I couldn't get a job either. It really struck a chord with me. I was not ready when I graduated to join the workforce. But that's all well and good. But how do you get from here to there? How do you get from, okay, I can't hire you, to yes, I can hire you? That sounds like kind of a pipe dream. And previously it was. There wasn't really a framework to do this. I didn't know how to do this. I was trying to do this in the industry, trying to work with schools to develop this talent, and it was just really, really difficult. There wasn't a framework. People aren't really doing it. Cyberbit has a bit of a different plan, and this is what I do based on my experience in conjunction with their platform. So what I really like to do is start with the end goal in mind. What are we trying to do? What is the instructor trying to do? Start with those learning outcomes, and then evaluate the syllabi, which I'll get from the instructor or the program director, and work my way backwards to fill in the gaps of, okay, I've been in the industry. I've seen what people don't actually know how to do coming out of school. Let me sprinkle in some of this content here. Let me sprinkle in some of that content here. I'm not trying to change the course. I'm not trying to tell the instructor what to do. I'm just trying to add some stuff that'll really take it to the next level for the student experience. And that's that informed expert recommendations I'm talking about. Is like I had a lot of people who didn't know how to use Linux. I need you to go into Linux and open up a log file. Can't do it. Okay. Most people know how to, most cyber graduates I talk to know how to open up Windows event logs, but not Linux logs. So let's go ahead and sprinkle some of that in. And that's all well and good. Me going through some content to try and make some recommendations, that's helpful, I think, in and of itself, but it's very limiting because instructors are busy. Instructors are super busy. So I need to enable them as best as possible to use the platform. So we do student, or I would do student and instructor orientations, oftentimes more than one, because what works for this instructor doesn't work for that instructor, and what works for this class doesn't work for that class. Whoops, I just pressed escape on accident. Of course I would. Why wouldn't I? All right, let's go ahead and get that shared again. It's not a webinar unless you have a hiccup, right?
Yeah. Love the fact that you're heading off some of the questions I have, but just how hard it is to create a curriculum when the instructor is already busy, the curriculum is already packed, and how do you weave in this work-ready talent? So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. There we go. We got the screen share back up. So it's certainly not a one and done thing either. You don't just take the instructors through it once. You don't just take the students through it once. Sometimes an instructor will teach a class and then they won't teach it again for a whole year. So they need to come back and be reintroduced. Students come back, you need to reintroduce them. And as I was saying before, a lot of this just simply hasn't been done. So you have to kind of revise these courses as you go through, because you'll ask the instructor, hey, I gave you all this content, how's that look? And they've never seen anything like it before. So they go, I think it looks good. I'm not entirely sure. So we'll run it for a semester. We'll run it for a semester. We'll see what works, what doesn't work. We'll come back, we'll make some adjustments. And then I'll also help the students. I make myself available for the students a lot of the time. If they want to run something as a group in class, I'll join the class. I'll run the lab on a screen share, help the instructor walk through it. So it's very much more than just throwing some content at someone. It's all about enabling the instructor to be as effective as possible with this content that we've got. And really what I'm trying to do when I do this is get someone workforce ready. If I could sum it up in just a sentence or two, workforce ready, get that hands-on experience with real enterprise level tools in enterprise level environments that line up with those job frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK and NICE that are going to enable the students to be able to essentially walk on and be able to do something. I always wanted to be a walk-on quarterback when I was a kid. Never happened, but I want to help some people be walk-on cybersecurity professionals. That's an American football story for any of those of you who are not in the United States. So what does that hands-on experience look like? This isn't like a simulated lab or a simulated screen where you have to click in the right areas and then it pops up a little bit of text and tells you something. This is much richer than that, and it really needs to be richer for the student's sake. So you want a hyper realistic environment with real network components and real network flaws, where maybe something's not secured as well as it should be, or the password policy's not being as enforced as it could be. You can't walk into this thing assuming everything's set up correctly. And then we prep the students for this live fire experience, what we call a live fire experience. I don't just drop students into this network of 40 people with an advanced persistent threat lurking in the environment. That's the end goal. That's the end goal. That's where we want to get to, but we're going to build and build and build with the enterprise tools, experience with the network, until we can do those live fire environments in those hyper realistic scenarios with real networks and real world threats, stuff you see out in the wild. So we really emphasize that hands-on component. That's what I wanted to see the most, and that's what I did not see essentially at all throughout my time as a hiring manager in the past, is that hands-on experience and that confidence to be able to walk into a real world network and perform. But it's more than just that. One of the things about these live fire environments that we have is that they can be team exercises. In fact, that's something that's really important from a hiring manager perspective, is I don't necessarily want someone who can sit in a vacuum and do all this stuff, because I mean, a lot of places are one-man shops, but a lot of places aren't. And if you're going to work for a cybersecurity tool vendor or something like that, you need to be able to work as a team. And that's that soft skill development. So what next? Do we have a team captain? Who's going to take what? Are you going to look over at this environment? Who's going to RDP over in here? So somebody being able to take leadership and then follow instructions and being able to switch back and forth in those roles and work together to come to a conclusion, that's extremely important. And that is one of the best things about those live fire exercises that I was talking about. And that's where we want to get people to, because that is the job. Those environments, those networks, those attacks, those are the job. They simulate the job happening right now. It's the same thing our enterprise customers get. when we're trying to train up professionals. How do you do this? Well, here's the environment. Go take a crack at it, see if you can do it. In fact, we ran a competition recently in October where we had several schools competing to try and find a ransomware attack. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't our easiest lab. It was one of the intermediate ones. And again, the same one our enterprise customers work on. Fresh sophomores from a community college won, not because they were the most educated, but because they had the best teamwork. So that was really, really great to watch. That was really great to be a part of. So we want to align these courses with standardized frameworks. It's not just about trying to get someone to be able to solve a puzzle. Like I was saying before, a lot of times when I was interviewing people, it was a bit of a challenge because some people would have really good knowledge, but they'd kind of be scattered everywhere. They weren't really aligned to one aspect of NICE or something like that, or they just didn't even know really anything about it. So one thing we'll try to do is, from my experience, I want to see people who can at least speak intelligently, work a little bit within these frameworks. So when I build out these courses, or I call them courses because that's what they look like. That's what they're called in the platform. But when I build out this supplemental content, that's really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to follow a story. I'm trying to follow a role. And usually classes kind of do that as well. So I'm really just trying to help the instructor do that. So I'm working with the instructors. I'm developing their comfort with the platform. I'm developing them to be able to build new courses because I have some 20 different schools I'm working with at any given time. I have well over 60 instructors. I want them to feel confident and comfortable that if I tell them, hey, I can't get back to you next week, they can go in there and do something that they want right now. So I want them to be able to do that as well. I always want to be there for them. I'm always going to offer to do that for them whenever I can. My whole job, like I said at the beginning, is to make instructors' lives as easy as possible because they're really, really busy, and to stick with them. It's engaged, hands-on, ongoing. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. And here's an example of one. So this is a really big one that we built out for a tier 1 analyst. And if I was to take a second crack at this was very specific to a syllabus that we were given, but it's supposed to work on that level of, or that development of it, kind of a story. It starts easier, gets more integrated into different like programs and processes like sysinternal, HTTPS protocols. These are labs where the students actually go in there and use these tools. They use Wireshark to look at HTTP, and they use sysinternals to evaluate processes and link those processes to process IDs and determine what those process IDs are doing and where they're coming from. And you keep working on this all the way until you get to that live fire exercise, which in this case is called Sherlock ransomware. And they were able to do it. They're able to actually do that. So you'll be able to look at this, if you want to watch the recording and pause it, you'll be able to look at this in depth. But this is an example of one.
Actually, I have a question for that.
Of course.
Did any of you see something that you would like to implement in your program? If you did, so what is it? If you can write in the chat, just can give us an idea.
And Jordan, while they're posting those questions, what they'd like to see, how did this team develop this curricula, this syllabus?
So this was actually with a syllabus. This was for a master's program, second year master's. So they'd already gone through a lot of the basics. And one of the things that I'm sure a lot of the program directors or education specific industry people here know is that in a lot of schools, you can join a master's program for something having zero experience in that. Like you could get your bachelor's degree in fine art and then try and get a master's degree in cybersecurity. So in a way, you're kind of starting from scratch. So this was meant to build on that second year experience that they were supposed to have. So I don't just look at the individual course, I look at the entire program a lot of the times to determine where this is going to fit in. So we start with something to understand where they are. And then we start working on some of that management communication bit. Then we start actually getting into the components and cover those things that weren't covered earlier in that master's program. So we're looking at network commands using CMD, some Linux commands, using Splunk specifically. That was something they wanted to touch on, using a SIM. So we added that in there. And yeah, we just went line by line through the syllabus, and the goal was to be able to detect a relatively difficult real world threat in an enterprise environment. Sherlock ransomware fit the bill. So we got that, and we kind of built backwards through the curriculum to get to where we needed to be here.
I know many of you wrote me that the chat is disabled. So first thing I will say that it's my first time like in front of the scenes, right? So I'm the producer and the co-host at the same time. So thank you for noticing it. And if you can please write in the Q&A box, it'll be best for all of us. So, right. So I see, Jordan, you have a few questions here.
There are a couple good ones. So how are the soft skills you mentioned integrated into the curriculum? Soft skills are difficult to train, and I would like to see more of this. Yeah, they are. They're really difficult to train. So we do have some modules that are specific to that. And we even have this thing called a crisis simulator, which is entirely soft skills driven. It's like a tabletop exercise where you could have part of your team working hands on keyboard trying to analyze the threat, and then another part of your team actually working through a different type of module that goes with the live fire exercise called the crisis simulator, where they're trying. So what are we going to do with marketing in this specific instance? What are we going to do? What are we reporting to our executives? What are we reporting to the board? How are we going to publish this? And then we need more information from the hands-on keyboard folk. Can you give us this information? Do you have that yet? And then the hands-on keyboard folk are working back and forth, trying to discover the different components of the threat and then communicate that up and work together as a team. And a lot of times we'll work together with schools to run these. Like this is one that I've run with students before. And I'll actually be there with the instructor making suggestions like, let's pick a team captain. Doesn't matter. You're just directing traffic. You're not really going to touch the keyboards. Let's direct traffic. And then we'll work together to try and build out that experience through the course of actually doing this. So I do this with the students a lot of times. I'm actually supplementing the instructor. So to summarize, we have modules that train that. We have different tools as part of the live fire exercise, and we actually offer in-class assistance for or supplement to the instructor to be able to help develop that based on what we've seen work at other schools.
All right, thank you. We have another question by Jen.
Yep, my question, curriculum development in cybersecurity or Cyberbit. Will it include artificial intelligence or quantum computing anytime soon? You know, I don't have any information on that off the top of my head. So I don't have any update on that. We're always coming out with new content. As you can imagine, the industry is changing constantly. So we're always coming out with new content. I would imagine that this will be integrated. We do have a little bit of artificial intelligence, but not a ton at the moment. And most of that's theoretical content.
We're always looking for the best people that we can interview to bring some of this thought leadership here. So if Gene knows some people that we should interview, I'd be keen to bring them onto the podcast and ask them. In our academies, we're weaving in the artificial intelligence and asking the students to play with several different tools because it's evolving quite rapidly. And they're using it everything from writing code to looking at threats to doing the research, like using like a Perplexity as opposed to using a Google search. But anyway, good question, Gene.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that we always focus on whatever will make the students' workforce ready. So if we'll see that it's something that is in demand, So obviously we will push in this direction. That's what we always do.
Few more questions here. So how does an instructor engage you in compiling a syllabus? So typically the way it works is program director, dean, whoever is going to work with the sales representative to actually acquire the program, and then I'll meet with the director and however many instructors they can get together in a meeting. Then I just tell them, hey, here's my email, write me, let's get in a meeting, let's talk about your syllabus. You can just throw the syllabus at me for now and I'll come back with something ready for you, usually within, I'll say, depending on how complex it is, I can do one course in a day pretty easy. So even if you get to me at like 3 o'clock Mountain Time, I can usually have something for you by the end of the day, Mountain Time. If you've got a whole curriculum of 17 classes you need me to look at and you want it really in depth, that can take well over a week. But a lot of them, I can do a single course really quick. If I have, the more context I have, the more time it takes. The more information you want, the more time it takes. If you just want me to give you something quick and easy, then I can do that real fast. So the mapping doesn't take long at all. That's the next question. What is the usual turnaround time for the mapping for those real life hands-on exercises? The mapping doesn't take long at all. It's what takes a little bit longer is understanding what the instructor is trying to do with that program, and if they want me to look in how that fits into the program, and if they have content in other classes that are prerequisites for that class that they're looking at now. Like this one was a second year master's class, so we looked at what was in the previous year's courses to be able to know what I should put into this one. So the more complex it is, the longer it takes. At the longest it's ever taken me to do one just to get them content was, and that was one where it was like a whole curriculum reassessment where it was several classes that took well over a week just to do the mapping. How do we solve that prerequisite knowledge component for a curriculum? So a lot of times we'll include that as supplemental content. So we'll have an LTI where someone's linking it directly to their Canvas shell or whatever LMS they're using, and we'll link the different modules into the course. But then I'll come back and say, hey, if you don't know how to use Wireshark, here's 4 lessons on Wireshark. And the platform itself, in this case, also has recommendations and content for that as well.
So that was by David, right?
Yes, that was David's
I
question.
just want to make sure we cover everyone. And now we're with Eric. Okay,
Yep.
You mentioned something important at the beginning of the call where you found that many people you interview had the knowledge but not hands-on experience. Do you think that security entry positions need to be created to provide this opportunity of holistic learning to new students?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And that's kind of what I was trying to do in my previous role. Was we were trying to figure out a way to create apprenticeship programs and entry-level positions to get people that hands-on experience, because we noticed it wasn't really happening at the education level. The thing is, there's not really a framework for that in this industry, and it was really, really difficult to do. It was really difficult to get the buy-in from different departments where we would need to build that up. It's like, okay, so we're going to have you go try and work in support for 6 months, and then after that, you'll go into professional services for a while. And then after you do that, maybe you can work on the engineering for 4 months. It's really hard to coordinate that type of buy-in from all the different stakeholders to be able to build something out like that out. And what I thought was more achievable from an enablement platform was to get the content into the hands of the school, because then people would be coming out with a lot of that knowledge beforehand, because that was the exact problem we were running into. Is, yeah, we needed to be able to do that, and we just couldn't get it to happen. I didn't have that kind of authority.
Since I get to run my program, since I'm the CIO of my my company and the head of
Uh-huh.
cybersecurity, we created a program, we created a role on the service desk, the support desk,
Uh-huh.
that is fielding some of the security alerts. So it's not quite a SOC
Mhm.
analyst, but they're getting hands-on experience on the service desk, and then we're challenging them with more and more things. But we also did require that they had like a Sec Plus certification before they did that.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that kind of a hybrid role we created? What, you know, sort of like for me, what could I be doing better? Because we're a small department, we're only 35 people.
I absolutely agree with that. That setting up some type of hybrid enablement role works really well. And one of the things we're noticing is that apprenticeships, any type of apprenticeship program, was just worth its weight in gold, honestly. If you could create a hybrid role where somebody was doing the thing part-time and doing education at the same time, kind of linking those low-level functions of security analyst or network administrator with their education in real time, that worked wonders. That was amazing. And we were able to do it exactly one time, but it really worked well. And I could see that it would probably work well just about with any of these different types of roles and programs. And that's where aligning the content to like a nice role really helps. And it's challenging. It's definitely a challenge.
Okay, so we have another question by Joseph. Going back to graduates not having the needed skill set, what method of approach would you recommend that graduates utilize to communicate their hands-on experience as they have experienced with Cyberbit? Obviously, saying I have hands-on experience is one approach, but it's not the most efficient and lacks clarity. What would you say?
Anytime you can get a certificate of completion for something that you've done, or you have some type of documentation to say, hey, I have this many hours working on this type of system, that is amazing. Students should keep their LinkedIn. I would highly recommend, I don't like saying should to people, but I would highly recommend keeping your LinkedIn and your resume up to date. I told the students, add this to your resume. It's like I spent 4 hours doing a ransomware attack in a network level environment, and I was able to accomplish this, and this. So any platform you use to incorporate a real world hands-on experience into your platform should have some mechanism for exporting what you've done and including that in your portfolio, however you organize that portfolio. So I tell students, put this on your resume. This is good. This is good content to have on your resume. I was able to do the thing you're hiring me to do. I did it. I spent this many hours learning it, and I spent this many hours actually doing it. So that's how I would do that.
I agree, Jordan. It helped our students get jobs when they were able to map, even if they color coded, there's some nice tools online where you can color code your experience with the MITRE attack framework. You can also go back to the nice, you know, competencies there and have some level of self-assessment, or getting some universities, some colleges offer the credlies, others to validate that. But of course, your real world experience from the Cyberbit platform, we actually recorded some of those sessions with the students, and then they put those links to the recordings, and that was a game changer in their interview process.
Yeah, walking in with a portfolio. I'm glad you mentioned Credly. Forgot about Credly. Any platform you use should also have some type of badging system. I participated in this cyber competition. I took first place. I've completed this many live fire exercises. Anything like that, also fantastic.
Is there like a
Great point, Adam.
particular theme or live fire that you think will be more impressive, or just really anything?
The more difficult ones in my mind, knowing where that's going to be more impressive to me. But even if you come in and say, I did the easiest one, I did the easiest live fire exercise that someone has to offer, even just having that puts you far and above anybody who doesn't have that kind of hands-on experience. Even if you only did it one time, if you're able to successfully do it one time. You're able to tell me I sat down for 4 hours, did the thing, it was a success. Here's my score. Here's what I was able to find. And the platform exports those details for you. It's going to put you well and above somebody who said, I studied it. Like that's very good, but I need to be able to hire, I need someone who can do the thing today. That's what industry's coming back with. Unfortunately, nobody in industry wants to spend their money training somebody up to be able to do the most basic functions. It's just not how the industry works. They don't want to do it.
It's interesting, Jordan. I'm actually heading back to Atlanta here in a few weeks for one of the cyber classes that I teach. And it's the last one of this academy. It's the last few days that I spend with the academy. So of course we're working on interviews. And I try and remind the students that people think the interview is a whole lot more complicated than it really is. At the end of the day, when you're getting to the final interview, the person looking at it sometimes is not conscious of this, but they're essentially only assessing you for three things. And one of them is, are you memorable? Because like me,
Yeah.
maybe like you, Jordan, we interview a lot of people. And at the end of
Mhm.
the day, if I've interviewed 10 or 12 people, even though I've taken diligent notes, sometimes I'm like, okay, now which candidate was this? So
Yeah.
something about you that's memorable. So you need to learn to tell a story which is authentic about yourself in a way that they will remember you without humble bragging and stuff. There's interesting ways to do that. And of course, one of the other thing that they're looking for is, are you a critical thinker? Can you communicate as part of the team? And they're looking for, did you grow and are you a critical thinker? Or are you curious? And there's some exercises. One of our earlier podcasts, we showed some exercises and how to build people's curiosity. And the last one is, can I see you as part of my tribe? Do I see you
Yeah.
working with my team? And if you've had the hands-on experience and you've been curious and you've been exploring some of these and you use the kind of language we use in industry, they can tell pretty quickly, as opposed to those that just went through the Sec Plus and the Python class and whatever. Those of us interviewing can tell pretty quickly. Anyway,
Yeah.
that would be my counsel.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. If you come in and you're speaking the language fluently because you've done the thing, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, David raised something funny. As a hiring manager, Jordan, how would you react if someone wrote on their CV, experienced at launching ransomware attacks?
I guess depends on the position, like you were saying. If they're doing penetration testing, then awesome.
But then
Excellent.
you ask them,
I
on
love
what
that.
machine did you do that?
Yeah,
What
on what
environment?
machine?
Yeah. Was it
Were you
defanged
able to?
malware, whatever?
Yeah, yeah. How did you go about doing that? That sounds awesome. And I mean, like, even if you're talking about it from a SOC analyst point of view, it's like that's actually probably helpful. Being able to understand how a threat works to the point where you can launch it. If you can launch an attack, in my personal experience and my thoughts, if you can launch an attack, you can detect that same attack because you know how it works. So that's actually helpful to me. If you studied mostly red team stuff, but you're going for a blue team job, that's not necessarily bad from my experience.
Okay, we
Good
have quite a
question,
few
sir.
more questions. Jordan, would you like to go through them?
Sure. I'm going to try and pronounce your name. Please forgive me if I say it wrong. Sachit. I think the type of rotational setup and program, a rotational program, if you will, can also be implemented at university, starting at the IT help desk, level 1, and maybe moving on to the cloud infrastructure teams before perhaps working in a SOC. Absolutely agree. I've worked with several schools. The first one that comes to mind is Palm Beach, where they have students working in this platform and doing roles at the university. The only problem I found with that, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's a limiting factor, is that it's usually for a very small percentage of the school. Very few people in the curriculum actually get to engage at that level and work at that level. So I absolutely agree with you. If there's a way to expand that out in the school infrastructure itself, that's going to be fantastic. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is get to those people who aren't necessarily going to be able to get into those programs. somebody who's maybe not the best in their class or the strongest, or the most memorable with the instructor. I'm going to get you the same type of experience with the platform as opposed to doing it through the school. Do I have any advice on convincing leadership at schools to put this together? Numbers. Numbers, numbers, numbers. If you have any kind of metrics to say, whenever somebody goes through this type of program, they get a job within X amount of days, X percentage of them get a job. It takes them this many days or months to get a job. Their typical starting salary is this. Take those numbers to marketing, come back and say, when people attend our program, this is what happens to them. If you can do that, then leadership speaks in dollar signs, is my experience.
Hey,
And,
Jordan, a couple of other things. I'd refer some of the audience back to a podcast guest we had, Mike Hamilton, who talked about the Pisces program, which has grown quite large to do this up in the Pacific Northwest and elsewhere. And then some states like Florida, North Carolina, Wisconsin have been able to get state level grants to fund the students to go be on these entry level positions to get their get their feet wet. And so that's and I was happen to be part of the one that helped raise the funding in North Carolina for that. So it does depend on the school, but I found that some of the smaller schools, they run out of seats on the help desk to get it. And then when I was running the IT at a university, it was hard for me to just even absorb the students. So part of the lesson is have a very disciplined career a curriculum, a program that they're going through on the job, as opposed to just showing up and the hiring manager goes, well, I'm not sure exactly how to use you. The head of IT at the community college is like, I don't know how to use you. So if the instructors, the professors can help the manager of the service desk department, the network department, and others, what the student's going to go through, that helps a lot to reduce the burden on them. But a number of states are finding it fruitful to get funding to pay for the students to do this work.
mm-hmm. And having a plan when you get there, like you were saying, Adam, that helps a lot. Being able to say, okay, I've got a 6-month position. It rotates out. We need 3 of them. And here's a playbook of exactly what they're going to do those whole 6 months. And then whether they were good at it or bad, the 6 months is over, next person. So having a plan, having a concrete plan of exactly what you want to do, that's really going to help get leadership in my personal experience. Just coming in and saying you want to do something, everybody's like, yeah, I want to do it too. But how? That how is what gets you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have quite more questions. Oh, sorry. Yes,
okay, no worries.
Go ahead.
No worries.
You
How do you make the
special guest speaker?
What's that?
You're a special guest speaker, so please go ahead.
I'll keep going. I'm used to talking. I used to talk for a living. So how do you make the learning in your programs technology agnostic so that they will stand the test of time as tools, techniques, attacks change? Well, a lot of this stuff is theoretical, and in the live fire environments, you can actually swap out the tools. Like you don't necessarily have to use Splunk. I know I've got Splunk here on the screen, but you could swap it out and use QRadar or something else. You can actually swap out those tools so that people have to try and go through it with Palo Alto Firewall or something else, and Splunk or QRadar or something else. So that's one way we do it, is trying to educate around the concept of what it does as opposed to how to do it. Like if you go into our platform, you're not going to be able to find everything you need to know in order to get a Splunk certification, but there will be enough there to get you going on the tool to be able to work in the live fire. That's kind of the goal, is have enough there to be able to do the thing that we're trying to teach you how to do. Does that answer? I hope that answers your question.
And also, David, you are also welcome to turn on your mic if you want to have a verbal discussion.
I'll jump ahead to a question that Chandra asked about the interest in developing entry-level course for unmanned aircraft systems. It's been a number of years, but I would look at the program that Elizabeth City State University was developing in the aircraft arena. I can't remember the head of the departments there, but if you can't make the connection there, let me know. Reach out through Shahar here, and we'll try and make that connection. But they built a program for UAVs, UAS.
Yeah. In a previous life, a long time ago, I might have been able to help you with that, but or previous role rather, but I can't help with that one on this one. What lab programs do you recommend to incorporate with classes involved in cybersecurity? What do you mean lab programs? So I'll have to throw that one back to you and ask you to specify on lab programs. Do I have any textbook recommendations? Not off the top of my head. I am sure if I had a little bit more of a specific framework around there, I could definitely make some recommendations, but textbook recommendations specifically around what would be a help. Not sure that I agree with the red team, blue team job statement. I think that it is much harder to learn all of the blue team skills, fixing all the bugs, maintaining skills, than the red team ones, finding a relatively few number of bugs and declaring success. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The blue team job is more, it's a wider spectrum of things. But what I'm thinking of in my perspective from a hiring manager was, okay, I've got 10 candidates over here who have theoretical only experience. They've done maybe 5 labs. They've studied all the blue team things. They know it really well. I've got a red team person over here who's spent 20 hours in different live fire exercises with different platforms. And they have had their hands on the keyboard. They've had their hands in the system. I'm still going to pick that red person team, that red person for a blue team job, because they've done some of the things. I honestly, when I was doing interviews, here's who I would check to see who I was going to interview. Do you have a degree? Do you have a certification? What kind, if you've got one? I didn't honestly even really care what your degree was in. Do you have a degree? Do you have one of the relevant industry certifications? And how much experience do you have? If you don't have the experience, not interviewing you. Sorry. Right off the bat, if you don't have any experience, whether it be educational or not going to interview you. If you don't have a certificate, that's going to put you below people who do have a certificate. If you don't have a degree, that's going to make it harder too. But that was my checklist.
Okay, we have
Yep, sorry.
2 attendees that would like to speak on a mic. First one is David, and then right after there's Joseph. So David, you can turn on your mic.
I don't need to talk. I just didn't have the option, Shahar. I'm good now.
All right. Thanks, David. All right, so we're moving on to Joseph.
By the way, on the books in cybersecurity, there's regarding the textbooks, there's lots of textbooks recommendations out there. But one of the sources that go look at the Ohio State University, the cyber canon that Rick Howard and the other team curates there. Lots of book recommendations there that they curate.
All right, Joseph, if you can unmute your mic, you can ask a question.
They even say the books they would not recommend.
Nice.
Hey, Joseph.
See, Joseph, you have your hand up. I don't see you muted, but we're not hearing anything.
And applaud to William. I'd completely forgotten. Yeah, North Dakota does have a great program. They have a great program.
All right, so if Joseph, you remember, you can raise your hand again and I'll unmute you. All right, we have quite a few more questions in the Q&A box.
Yep.
We can try to address all of them quickly because we want to respect everyone's time and finish on time. All right.
I'll provide my email.
I have to say, I
quick.
appreciate David's question here. Not sure that I agree with the red team, blue team job statement. I think that it's much harder to learn all of the blue team skills, fixing bugs, etc. than the red team ones, finding a relatively few number of bugs and declaring. This is one of those challenges. I think I agree with David here. It's hard enough to pack everything you have in a 2 or 4 year program. It's hard enough to pack it into like ours, a 9-month academy and stuff. So David, we try and teach both the red team and the blue team at the same time, but I agree with you. If we're erring on the side of the amount we can pack into a program, I agree with you there, leaning towards the red team.
I see some of you asking for Jordan's email, and I will send Jordan, if it's okay with you, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
If you want to consult, if you want to ask further questions, I'll link you to I'll send you Jordan's email and LinkedIn profile so you can connect with him directly after this session with the recording.
Sounds good. So you mentioned a sample syllabus was for a second-year graduate program. Do you have something similar for introductory undergraduate courses? Lots and lots. I build each one custom. I could just throw one out there, but I build each one custom. Lab programs for students that provide hands-on experience that follows a textbook, possibly. Yeah, that's one way I've done it, actually. The instructor didn't, they were brand new to the school. Semester was starting in a couple weeks. They said, I don't know what I need to do. Here's the textbook I was planning on using. And I made a bunch of I put together a bunch of content for them that followed the textbook. And they were able to cut out the pieces where they didn't necessarily want to, they didn't want to cover that in class. It was a 6-week class, it was a long textbook, so they cut out several chapters. But I was able to get something for them. What are the relevant industry certifications? There are a few to choose from. The low-level ones I'm thinking of when I was a hiring manager, like if you have CompTIA, anything CompTIA, that's your foot in the door. Yeah, Sec Plus. A plus isn't the best, but CYSA plus, Network Plus, any of those are great just to get you started. And then you could go more advanced with like CISSP or some of the other ones. Certified Ethical Hacker.
Yeah, for the entry level ones, I'm kind of an odd duck here. The Net Plus and Sec Plus were two that we focused on because they were good. And then some of the cloud certifications are evolving, but we found it helped a student to pick a cloud platform as opposed to one of the generic, and get through the curriculum like at the Google, the AWS, the Azure. And then as far as the the next generation of certifications like CISSP, I actually do not recommend those, because you should be fairly well along in your career before something like that. Sort of the 5 letters, certifications make sense to me. But
yeah,
Net Plus was one of the harder ones to get through. We found entry level, and a good one.
Mm-hmm. And ideally, your platform would have some content for that right away. Like a Cyberbit, we're lucky enough that our product team does create content for the most up-to-date Sec Plus, Net Plus, CISA Plus certifications. So there is actually a track built right into the platform for those. So that's super helpful. Very effective. How effective is Cisco Packet Tracer for practicing cybersecurity skills? I'm not actually familiar with using that tool, so unfortunately I can't answer that one.
We used it in our programs and found it to be a very good tool to start with. So I would advocate for that. I know that sometimes you get into what's the Cisco versus the Palo Alto curriculum and stuff, but we were a big fan of the Packet Tracer.
Yeah, a lot of times free training is just super helpful. Or I don't know if that platform is free, but it made me think of a lot of the Splunk training is actually free. You can get a lot of that incorporated into your course. Yeah, it's not technology agnostic, but if you learn how to use a SIM, SIMs all kind of work a lot of the same way. It just made me think of that. Can you provide more details on how you would help us implement these hands-on activities into the curriculum and what the pricing may be? I cannot help you with pricing. In terms of what my services cost. If you get with Cyberbit, I do all that for everybody. I personally don't care how much you spent, because like I said, this is a passion project for me. I'm going to help you to the best of my ability. When it comes to implementing the hands-on activities, well, we'll often jump on a call, like a lot of classes are remote nowadays. We'll actually jump in the class and kind of help walk through that, especially the first few times, so that the instructor feels more comfortable with it until they're ready to go. We also have a support function that students can reach out. If they have any technical issues, they can contact support, and support will work with them right then to try and fix the issue.
All right, but Sachit, I will
Yeah.
connect with you after the session so I can help you with anything you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Policemen equal good criminals. Good criminals don't always equal policemen. Yeah, I could see that. It's just when I was thinking specifically of when I had the option to choose.
All right, so we're heading to the end of the session, and actually it was a pleasure. We had a lot of questions, right, Adam? I don't remember that much. That many
Yeah,
questions
I
in this session.
appreciate it. Appreciate the questions and comments we were going to say earlier. Please interrupt and stuff, but Jordan, obviously this was of great interest. The value you provide to your clients, we hear is awesome. Thanks for being a coach to those of us that needed it from you and the other team members. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you again for Jordan, for Adam, and of course to you, the audience, for asking the questions, for being engaged, and for being here with us. And we're always happy to share help and provide any help needed. So it's the end of the session where you can find the Cyberbit recording. It'll be live, I guess, in a few days on all platforms for podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and on our YouTube channel, and of course on Cyberbit's website as well. Please remember to follow us on LinkedIn for any updates about upcoming sessions as well. And you can ask also Jordan, Adam, and myself questions on LinkedIn or in the email that I'll send later. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.